my name is Monica Manzo, and today I'll be discussing the history of one of my favorite Guatemalan dishes, Chuchitos and Chipilin. They are very similar to tamales in terms of ingredients used and appearance, but the consistency of the masa or maize dough in Chuchitos is thicker because it isn't cooked before being wrapped in corn husks. In this video, I'll be focusing on the migration and development of two key ingredients of this food, chipilines and maiz. So let's begin first by talking about chipilines. In her article discussing chipilines, Julia Morton talks about how this vegetable is native to southern Mexico, but grew to become popular in Guatemala and El Salvador. The raw leaves of chipilines can be emetic and purgative, leading to their usage in local folk medicine in Central America. However, when cooked, the leaves are utilized in a variety of dishes like chuchitos, soups, omelets, and rice. This leafy green's migration into the United States has had a rocky past. In the early 1900s, it was introduced to Hawaii, but by 1957, it was considered a noxious weed on Maui because of its ability to form thick stands, thus shading out useful grasses. Despite this labeling as noxious in one of the states, this has not prevented chipilines from becoming more popular overall. Chipilines have been imported to the United States in growing quantities in these past few decades due to the number of Central American immigrants entering the United States and wishing to recreate their traditional recipes. My family has definitely benefited from this since it allows us to find the vegetable at our local supermarket and use it in our food. So now let's talk about one of the most important staple crops from the Americas, maize. Before the Europeans arrived in the New World, the Mayan Empire ruled over what is now present-day Guatemala, and not only was maize a staple ingredient for consumption, they perceived it as something that needed to be worshipped. The importance of maize can be seen in the Popol Vuh, which recounts the mythology of one of the Mayan groups, the Quiche people. The mythology was told through word of mouth for several generations before it was written down. However, original copies of the Popol Vuh no longer seemingly exist. Fortunately, in the early 1700s, the Dominican friar Francisco Jimenez copied the original manuscript in the town of Chichicastenango and also translated the work from Quiche into Spanish. Now housed in the Newberry Library in Chicago, the manuscript preserves many mythological recountings, including the creation of humans. According to the Mayans, their deities created human beings out of maize. Therefore, not only was maize viewed as sustenance, but as the foundation for their very existence. The art and pottery from this civilization also reflects how crucial maize was to the Mayans. For instance, plates like this one were commonly decorated with the maize god, who was thought to have a life cycle that consisted of 4 stages: death at harvest, transportation to the underworld via canoe, adornment, and resurrection. In an article regarding this deity, Brian Just explains that this specific plate from around 600 to 800 AD shows the maize god dancing on top of his skull, indicating his resurrection. There's also this Fenton vase from the Mayan Empire that is from the same era as the plate. The vase depicts a tribute of tamales, which, as previously stated, is made of maize flour. The food is being presented to someone of high status, presumably a ruler. Therefore, Mayans didn't see maize and foods made out of maize flour as something to be consumed solely by those of low-class status. However, this was certainly a view upheld by Europeans when they first encountered this grain. This perception is clearly exemplified in a letter written by journalist John Sharon Bartlett in 1842 to Baron Ashburn, where the former comments that the introduction of maize into the British population would be beneficial because it was cheap and thus it would sustain the poor and working classes. Bartlett claimed that 1 pound of maize flour, which cost 1 penny, would give a breakfast to 4 persons at 1 farthing each. Maize to him, people of European ancestry and Europeans in general, was something to eat if necessary for survival. It was not really something to be sought out otherwise. In speaking of the history of maize, it is vital to note the process used by Mesoamericans to transform this grain into a dough. This involves a procedure called nixtamalization, where the maize is soaked and cooked, as well as a tool used throughout Latin America known as the metate. The metate is essentially a ground stone tool that, according to Arnold Bauer in his article Millers and Grinders, Technology and Household Economy in Mesoamerica, was utilized by the people in this region since before 3000 BC, and its usage remained unchanged for 5,000 years. Even moving into the 1800s, with all the century's technological innovations and inventions, people in Mesoamerica preferred the traditional metate. And the people who were using the metate were primarily women who would wake up early in the mornings and labor for hours to produce this maize flour to use in their meals. In order to make chuchitos de chipilin, my family does not go through this entire process of nixtamalization and grinding maize with a metate. To learn more about the production of this food, my mom offered to make chuchitos de chipilin and talk about the changes in her lifetime regarding the creation of this dish, especially in terms of the development and the usage of maize flour.
Durante la época en que mis padres vivían fuera de la capital, ellos cultivaban en su propiedad el maíz para hacer la elaboración de las tortillas o los tamales o lo que fuera. Para preparar la masa, en este caso de los tamales de Chipilin, se ponía a cocer el maíz con un poquito de cal para que al lavar el maíz se pelara fácil. Inmediatamente se pasaba por un molino manual o una piedra de moler si no había molino para hacer una masa fina. Ya inmediatamente pues se preparaba la masa para hacer los tamales agregándoles la sal, el aceite y las hojas del chipilín. Ya cuando nosotros nos trasladamos a vivir a la capital, pues ahí ya había, ahí existía la harina de maíz, que pues esa ya solo se compraba y el procedimiento era el mismo para hacer los tamales, con la única diferencia que el sabor pues es diferente, porque la masa original pues tiene otro sabor distinto a la harina de maíz.
I cannot testify to the difference in taste between Chuchitos made with homemade maize dough and those made with instant maize flour found in supermarkets. However, utilizing this instant maize flour, like the one my mom just used, does save time and allows the dish to be prepared more quickly. Chuchitos at Chipilin are a seemingly simple but flavorful dish that I've enjoyed ever since I was a kid. My family typically prepares it for special occasions such as Christmas, but now whenever I travel to Guatemala, my relatives make it for me because they know it's one of my favorite foods. It's even become kind of a last meal that I have during these visits. I cannot wait to travel to Central America once again to see my relatives and try amazing Guatemalan cuisine.